Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I will call the meeting to order. It's 4 p.m. on July 10th. I'll start with roll call. Mike Cruz is present. Claire Edelman Heath. Present.
Yeah, present, sorry.
Anthony Garcia. Claire Johnson. Carla McCord.
Present.
Matt McGrath.
Present.
Chris Farrell. Here. Thank you. The upcoming event is always on here just as a gentle reminder to please check Flagstaff 365 for information on relevant activities that are going on in our city. Any public participation?
No, we heard from no one who wanted to publicly participate.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward to the approval of minutes. Did folks have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting in June? Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve them as submitted.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. It's been moved and seconded to approve the June minutes of our BPAC meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? The motion carries and the minutes are approved as submitted. Thank you. We're moving forward to announcements, and I'm gonna do my announcement first, just to welcome our new commissioners, Carla McCord and Claire Edelman Heath. Thanks very much for joining us. We're very happy that you're here, and we look forward to working with you. Do we want to introduce ourselves, starting with Chris?
Sure. I'm Chris. I have been working in arts for all of my career, a lot of performing arts, a lot of public radio, public television. I'm currently the executive director at Theatricals and a fellow parade marcher with the Jedi. That's all you need to know.
Very effective.
Hi, I'm Matt McGrath. I work for the Forest Service here. Been in town for almost 5 years now. On the commission for about a year and a half. And I even brought civilian clothes today to change into because I hate always looking like this. And then got busy and have still wound up looking the same. Best laid plan still didn't come through.
I think you should be a memorized countdown. That's my first outfit. All right, so I'm Jana Weldon. I'm the Beautification Arts and Sciences Program Manager. I've been about a year now, but I started as project administrator about 3.5 years ago. I've been about 23 years in public art after I got smart and left the law.
Craig Zaneko. I am the recording secretary for the Beautification and Public Art Commission. I have been with the city for, I just celebrated 8 years last month. And I have been in Flagstaff since 1990, so we are almost 33 years now. I've been in Flagstaff. Lots of change.
Imagine.
I'm Mike Cruz. I am at NAU. I've been in Flagstaff since 2018. This is my second 3-year term on the commission. I currently serve as chair. I've been chair for just over a year. I think I took somebody's chairpersonship when he no longer wanted it, and then I did a year. I'm on the board of the Symphony Orchestra. I'm on an FUSD board, and I do some other stuff. So I am involved that way and definitely a joiner and committed to doing service work. I'm not creative, but I'm gay, and I think that goes a long way with the creative. So, I'm happy to be here and glad that you guys have joined.
It counts.
It does, absolutely.
I'm Susan Hardman. I'm the Beautification Arts and Sciences Projects Administrator. I've been here since November. Before that, I was at various cities doing public art for about 6 or 7 years. And before that, I was a professional interior designer, and I made the change. I said, gotta get out of this. So public art it is. And happy to be here and welcome to your vote.
And may the record reflect that Commissioner Garcia has joined us.
My name is Kristen Carrillo, and I am the Art Collections and Beautification Coordinator. And I have been in Flagstaff for 10 years, and I've been in the arts, nonprofit arts, for more than 20, specifically in programming and then marketing and public relations.
If we could go back to council member Sweet. Yes.
Sorry, I kind of was sitting in the back there. So I'm Miranda Sweet and I serve on the city council and I've been the liaison, I think 2.5 years for a while. And I love public art of all types. I have a store downtown. I've had it I'm going on 23 years and love all the great things that this commission does.
And then Commissioner Garcia, then we'll have our new council members introduce themselves.
Whoa. Oh, you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't put my glasses on. I'm Anthony Garcia. I currently serve as vice chair of, or chair of Sunnyside Redevelopment Committee, and I've been on BPAC for quite a while. And Carla knows the spiel, but for you, I just want you to feel welcome and expressing yourself and whatever the idea is. I particularly like Against the Grain because it spawns conversation. I mean, not to do it, just to do it, but whatever your ideas are valuable to us. Expressing yourself about those ideas is the reason why we're here, based on community input. So thank you.
My name is Carla McCord. This is my third one-year commission with a year or commission appointment with a one-year break. I love BPAC and I love public art. So I have a fine arts degree, but 25 years ago, but I've been in marketing and fine arts and graphic design ever since, and have a particular passion for the built environment and equity in arts. So.
I'm Claire Edelman-Heath. I new recruit to Flagstaff, but I'm a landscape architect and had the opportunity to focus on sustainability and work with on a lot of public projects that incorporated art into them, including one of the projects currently happening, which is at the Downtown Connection Center. So very excited to be here, and I'm also gay, so I've doubled up on the creativity.
I think Claire, you're also working a little bit on the Rio de Flag, doing some design for approval for the Army Corps of
That's right. Yeah. So,
yes.
so yeah, I'm getting to work here locally with North Design and yeah, on several public projects, which is a real delight. It's kind of my favorite piece to work on.
Thank you. Welcome again.
Okay, so if you have a place to mark on a calendar, if you can, possibly hold October 20th, 21st, and 27th. And I know that's a lot of dates, but let me tell you, I imagine one of them is going to disappear. But right now, I have been working on with the Schinger Art Center down in Phoenix, a full-day workshop on public art. It is not quite 100% a go, but we're 85% there. And then we're also trying to work with ArtLink down there to put together a public art tour the following morning. So that's a Friday and a Saturday. And then the last Friday is our traditional date to, hold our retreat. I'm wondering in the end if we might not hook them together or if we might shorten that to a half day, because we'll have a lot of the, what Commissioner Garcia says is that, peppy stuff with the, with the workshop. And so maybe we don't need to incorporate as much of that into the retreat date. So I'm hoping that we can tighten this up, but I do ask that right now you do hold all those dates if they're available for you and notify me if they are not. And then the other thing that we are doing is we're gonna have a program table. We had so much fun at Art X having a program table in Heritage Square, and it got so much word out about our program and the stickers that you guys are all, relishing, was part of that promotional swag that we had. And so we want to do it for the first Fridays until, it gets too cold out there to do a table. So I'm gonna send out an email and ask if you're available to do a table. I know that I am going to be doing on August 4th, but these are the dates: August 4th, September 1st, October 6th, and November 3rd. So just ask, I'll send a follow-up email and I'll kind of track it and then send out a schedule for everybody.
Great. I have already done my chair announcement. Are there any other commissioner announcements? Hearing none, we can move forward. There are no action items. Are we ready for the discussion items?
I believe Jordan Hollinger is available online. And so Jordan, you can take it away for the regional plan update.
Sure, yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick and make sure that everyone can see that.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. And I can't see the chat while I'll be presenting here, so please just holler if you need me to stop or have any questions. I'll have some time at the end for some questions as well. But yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Jordan Hollinger. I'm an associate planner with the city's comprehensive planning program, and I am one of the core team members working on the Flagstaff Regional Plan update. And that's our current effort to take our currently adopted plan with which looks out to 2030 and update it so that it looks out to 2045. So I know there were some introductions with some new commission members. So probably some of you don't remember this, but we actually came to your commission as well as several other commissions last year and did what we called a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats assessment relating to our regional plan update. So since that time, if you remember that, we've taken that feedback, moved forward. We've done a lot of public engagement regarding the plan update and are just back in our effort to try and keep all of the city's boards and commissions updated as to where we are with the project. So, and just to explain why we're coming to all the commissions, the Flagstaff Regional Plan, as this image demonstrates, sits at the top of all of our cities' planning kind of hierarchy. So the regional plan kind of filters down into our specific area plans or topical plans, and then ultimately gets implemented through the codes that we adopt, as well as our annual budget priorities and sort of the direction that we as staff receive from City Council as well. We call it a regional plan because we co-create it with Coconino County to cover both the city of Flagstaff as well as many of the unincorporated communities that surround Flagstaff. So think Donny Park, Kachina Village, Mountain Air, Belmont. Those communities are included in this planning effort. So for us in the city, this serves as our general plan, while in Coconino County, this is an amendment to their comprehensive plan. And this is also the only planning document that the city creates that is actually adopted by voters. So we will start to write the plan later this year, and then hopefully next year will be put on a ballot measure for you all to vote on. And just to take you back to kind of how we're approaching the update process, we identified 4 distinct phases of plan development at the start of this process. We're currently in phase 2 of the plan update. So phase 1, which included that SWOT assessment that we did with your commission and other commissions, was really about preparing background materials, producing informational webinars. We collected a lot of data. We sort of did general outreach at places like Concerts in the Park and just talking to people about the plan update and kind of giving out information about the update process. We had a local artist create art boxes for us that we used, as well as places like Concerts in the Park, just to kind of build excitement about the plan update. And we're still using those currently at Concerts in the Park. So you might see us out there one of these weeks.
I will
Um,
mention that the commission approved that project. It was
yes, thank you for jumping in there. I neglected to mention that. Yeah. So thank you. They've been really great. And we've actually taken them into schools and had we've been able to engage with students as well. So it's been a really, really useful tool in this update process. So last fall, we started phase 2 of the plan update process with a series of visioning workshops. And we held 11 total workshops, and we spread these throughout the planning area. So we tried to make them convenient for people to attend. And our central or focal question for the workshop was think about how you live, work, and play in the Flagstaff region. How can we build a community together that allows all community members of the region to thrive through 2045 and beyond? So during the workshops, we had 4 stations that included a card storming vision statement station where we just asked people to kind of write their vision for the future of Flagstaff. We had a station where we asked people to think about the trade-offs that we need to plan for. So we called that our Dotmocracy question prioritization station. We had a community asset mapping station, and then we had kind of a less formal talk with your neighbor. And we also brought the art boxes that I mentioned to the workshops as well, for people to just sit around and kind of talk with each other about what their interests are, what their concerns are, that kind of thing. So in total, we had 150 plus workshop participants. And then along with the workshops, we also had a survey on the Flagstaff Community Forum that posed sort of similar questions. And we had 126 respondents to that survey too. So in all, we had 270 plus participants in that effort. From the workshops, we heard a lot about what the community values, what they want to see for the future of the Flagstaff community, and ultimately what might be central themes that could shape or be a part of the next regional plan. So probably the most frequently cited element of the Flagstaff community that people value is our natural environment, open spaces, parks, and really ensuring that those things are preserved and that people have access to them well into the future. We also heard a desire or a desire for more transportation options outside of single occupancy vehicles. We heard a desire to see better housing options and more affordable housing options. We heard about a hope that Flagstaff becomes a more equitable place for residents. There was also a lot of concern about retaining our unique community character, and then also wanting to see City Council and the Board of Supervisors being responsive and accountable to community needs. So moving from that conversation kind of around those high values and visions for the future of the community, we moved into a process that we call scenario planning. And scenario planning is all about testing ideas and trying to understand how different policy directions may play out in the future. So to do this, we are using a software called Urban Footprint, which is, we call this a sketch modeling software. And what this type of program allows us to do is test different ways of allocating growth and development throughout the region. So remember, the Flagstaff Regional Plan is really central. Its central theme is land use, how we use our land throughout the region. So this type of program allows us to look at different ways if we grow in a particular way. What does that mean for things like we can look at things like driving behavior, water consumption, housing prices, carbon emissions. We can kind of test all of those outputs in kind of these different modeled scenarios. So for the scenario planning process, we formed at the beginning of that process, we formed what we call a technical advisory group, and they are a group of people that are really helping to advise us as staff and our consultant team, Cascadia Partners, on the assumptions and data that we are bringing into the scenario planning process. So right now we're in the process of that group looking over materials from our workshops, both the the scenario planning workshops that we've done more recently, which I'll talk about in a second, and then our visioning workshops that we held last year, and developing what we call scenario themes. And that involves taking a broad set of ideas that came from our engagement with the public and distilling them down into narratives in terms of growth and development that we can then model using that software that I talked about on the previous slide. So once we finish creating those themes and model them, that will happen this summer, we will bring those scenario themes and model results back to the public so that they can see what each one means for our community and then ultimately choose one. So our technical advisory group is made up of a lot of different people with varying expertise. You can see the list on the right-hand side here. And a lot of these people are experts in a particular field like housing, transportation, land use, natural resources. And then others are more community experts who might be better positioned to understand how a particular scenario might negatively impact a particular community, or maybe tell a compelling or misleading story as well. So all of these people have volunteered to help us. We invited them from a longer list than this. And I think it's really important to note that this group is not helping us to decide policy direction. They are simply a technical group that is helping us to decide how we test what we hear from the community and how we can be as robust as possible in our scenario modeling process. So we meet with this group once or twice a month, and we record their meetings, and you can watch them on our website after. We don't have these meetings live to the public, but we record them, and then you can provide feedback through the Flagstaff Community Forum. So while that group, our technical advisory group, or our TAG, has been working on the back end, we have been heavily engaged with the community kind of around this idea of future growth and uncertainty. So maybe some of you, what you're looking at on the screen here might look familiar. Hopefully some of you attended our workshops, but earlier this spring we hosted 13 workshops, and we called them Face the Future Flagstaff. And we held several with the public, and then we held a number that were in non-traditional workshop settings. So for example, we went to A New Living, which is a local transitional housing organization. We had help from the Northern Arizona Interfaith Council to put on an all Spanish workshop. We also held several workshops in classroom settings. So we held one with the Flagstaff High School Native American and Hispanic Heritage Clubs, and then we held two at Northland Prep Academy. So just to talk a little bit about the workshop itself, this wasn't maybe what you would think of as a typical workshop, in that it wasn't kind of, we didn't set up different stations for people to walk around to. We actually created a game that forced people into a position of kind of planning with us, getting into the sandbox with us, and thinking about uncertain conditions for the future of Flagstaff and how that might impact how we want to grow and develop going into the future. So participants at the workshops were broken into groups of 5 or 6. They received a game board that you can see on the screen here. That was a gridded map of the regional planning area. And then they were assigned what we called challenge cards, 3 random challenge cards that had conditions pertaining to jobs and population growth, climate change impacts, and infrastructure funding. And the goal of the game was to allocate different types of growth. So think residential, commercial, industrial, civic, park space, to allocate that type of growth throughout the region under the random conditions that were created for their particular scenario of the game. So what that forced people to do was, instead of just kind of telling us where they did and didn't want growth, they had to think more strategically given their game conditions. So for example, in a scenario where a group had high population and jobs growth, but maybe low future infrastructure funding, they had to think about optimizing new growth along existing infrastructure. Some groups, went really took the game to heart and kind of went in that direction, while others really wrestled with kind of just the idea of growth in general and not liking the idea that we might continue to grow as a community. So I think one of the things that's really powerful about doing scenario planning in this way is that it starts to shake up some of our assumptions and predetermined ideas about what the future holds. And tasks participants with solving challenges collectively and working with people that maybe they don't agree with on certain elements of growth and development. So out of this process, we created 60 maps and a set of detailed notes about how each group played the game and sort of why they placed their game tokens in the way that they did. And we had two really great interns that spent, I believe, like a week or two digitizing all of this information for us and turning it into data that our consultants have taken with our technical advisory group and started to think about how we can create scenarios out of the data that we receive from the public. So the major themes that we saw coming out of the workshops included kind of general support for this idea of complete neighborhoods or mixed use development, really kind of the central idea being multimodal access to services and amenities throughout Flagstaff. We definitely also heard concerns about growth and what that means in terms of our community character and traffic. So really a desire to also see any growth that we might see managed as well in terms of density. We also heard a lot of support for transit, better road and multimodal connectivity, so more bike lanes, sidewalks, larger sidewalks, that kind of thing, and as well as a desire to try to mitigate congestion. And then, like we heard in the visioning workshops, we really heard that it was very important to pretty much all community members to protect our existing open spaces, our national forests, parks, and other natural amenities that I think most of us use on a regular basis. So from the visioning and these Face the Future workshops, as well as from some online surveying that we did kind of in conjunction with those two efforts, our tag and consultant team have started to look at how we can package some of these ideas into scenario themes that will then get built into that modeling software urban footprint that I mentioned earlier. So after we do that and we see the model results, we will bring those back to the community along with kind of narratives that kind of describe what the scenario is bringing to the table. And we'll have what we call a scenario choosing process. And that's really where people will weigh in on what they think about the scenarios and hopefully help us pick one that we will organize the next regional plan around. So part of this process, and I think an important part of this process has been creating what we are calling a business as usual model. So in addition to kind of these efforts that maybe look at policy direction for the future, we also have been working on creating a model that looks at what if we don't really do anything differently than what we've been doing in the recent past. So kind of thinking about if we take our recent trends over the last 10 or so years and we project them out into the future, what does that mean for our community? And doing that type of modeling alongside kind of what we're calling our alternative growth scenarios gives us a pretty good picture of kind of where we're headed as a community and how we might deviate from that if we want to change the outcomes for our community. So what I can tell you from our initial modeling efforts in this, what we're calling business as usual scenario, is that we don't really move the needle on a lot of the things that we as a city have said we care about, things like carbon neutrality or housing affordability. Some of those things get worse. Some of them kind of stagnate, and we don't really start to move the needle on them. So it kind of adds this conversation to our scenario modeling efforts that says, okay, we're kind of headed in a direction that maybe doesn't look like the Flagstaff that we envision for the future. How can we start to kind of alter our course and maybe head towards a better outcome for our community members? So so the scenario modeling is kind of is what we're doing to round out phase two. So we wanted to make sure you were aware of a few things that we've been doing recently that you can still participate in. So the growth ideas that came out of our Face the Future workshop, we brought those to the public at both a June 15th webinar, and then we held an open house here at City Hall on June 26th. The webinar we recorded, and you can still watch that online at the link here, and I think Jana has the slides to the presentation. If not, I can pop the link in the chat at the end of my presentation. And then we also have an opportunity to comment using the Flagstaff Community Forum on that webinar as well. So feel free to check that out and give us your thoughts on kind of what came out of that effort. We have a tag meeting coming up towards the end of this month, the beginning of next month. And then, as I mentioned a couple times, we'll have that scenario choosing process, which will be the close of our phase 2 efforts. So after we've done all this work, engaging with the public, kind of talking and listening about all the things that people care about and kind of want to see for the future of our community, we do have to start writing the plan. So that will be kicked off by our scenario choosing process later this fall. Then in terms of writing the plan, we are convening a city and county manager appointed committee to oversee us as staff actually writing the plan. And the way that that works is kind of as follows. We have received nominations from city council members as well as the county board of supervisors. And we are now working on putting together a staff report that will look at if there are any knowledge gaps or geographic representation issues across those nominations. Maybe receive some more if we find that some of our areas aren't being represented in that group. And then ultimately, the city and county managers will review and invite 20 of those nominees to be a part of our writing committee. So our hope is that the first committee meeting will take place kind of right after or hopefully around the time that we're doing the scenario choosing process. And then from that point on, this group will meet 1 to 2 times per month and kind of see us through the writing of the plan for maybe 6 months beyond that point. So one of the cool things about setting up our kind of advising committee in this way is that it is not in the same way that your commission is kind of a formal city commission. This committee will set up its own rules on things like quorum and operating procedures. And what's really nice about that is that the group will kind of get to operate a little differently, and they can do things like ask us to do additional public involvement. They can host their own workshops or informational sessions without kind of needing those typical rules of quorum and that kind of thing. So from there, the plan will kind of be created through the framework or the steps that you see here on the screen. And that first step will be having the committee decide what our writing schedule will look like and kind of what our overarching objectives are. So once we have that chosen scenario that comes out of our scenario planning effort, we will initially start to craft our land use chapter. As I mentioned, the regional plan is really, the central theme is really about land use. And but then we build lots of chapters and information kind of off of that. So we'll likely have chapters on natural resources and things like water, transportation. We may include elements of beautification and public art, which the currently adopted regional plan doesn't have a whole lot of that in there. And we heard from this commission that there was a desire to see a little bit more of that in the next one. So we'll, as we develop a lot more, yeah, thanks. So as we kind of develop that land use chapter, we'll really start thinking about what we want to include in the plan and how we want to organize it. And then it's really about iteration until the committee is ready to endorse a draft for legal review and then ultimately public review. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us in the near future. So thank you for listening. I know that was probably a lot, especially to some of the newer commission members. I will stop sharing my screen here.
I'd like to
And
ask if any of the commissioners were able to participate this last spring in any of the workshops. I know that our former vice chair did, so I just was wondering if anybody else had the opportunity. Okay, but it looks like there's some, if you want to catch up a little bit with the watching the webinar and then go to the scenario in the fall.
yeah, and we've got a fairly well built out project website too that I can pop in the chat here. So feel free to take a look at that. And there's a lot of good background information in terms of where we've been over the last 2 years in preparation for actually putting pen to paper. So And then I always like to remind people that you can feel free to just reach out to myself or my boss, Sarah Dector. And if you want to just chat with us on the phone or via email about the plan update and ideas or concerns that you have, we're always welcome to engage in those conversations too.
Well, Jordan, I'm very excited to hear that the art boxes have been put to such good use. We did hold a session here last August.
Mm-hmm. That's right, with Mark.
We did, just one of the boxes. There was 5 different boxes. They each did kind of a different land use. I think there was water, you know, there was different ones. I can't remember right now which
Yep.
one.
So we have so they kind of cover our key regional plan themes, which would be transportation, housing, land use, water. Uh, we have one on dark skies that was kind of an exciting one for the person that we had create these for us. Um,
Commissioner Farrell, I believe you participated in that.
Dude, that was great fun.
yeah, it's been really amazing to I mean, we've used them, as I mentioned, we've been taking them. We kind of just continue to use them because they're such great tools for just kind of bringing people to the table. Um, but it's been amazing in addition to kind of working with youth through them, the times that we've been able to do this with kind of the adult residents. It's like it just breaks down these kind of barriers to creative thinking and really allows people to just think differently about our community. So it's been really, really cool to have those a part of this process.
I really am a little bit sorry not to get to play the board game yet. No, actually, I didn't catch on that there was a board game. I might have gone if I picked up on it. I think I was vacationing in that time period, so.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Jordan?
Can we have the URL put into the minutes?
I do have a couple of questions, Jordan.
Sure.
I was wondering where you see the public art statement fitting into the plan, or do you see it differently?
I think recognizing the impact that our built environment has on people from kind of a accessibility to opportunity as well as just an emotional relationship with the place that we live. We're seeing a lot of planning efforts go in the direction of including more explicit goals and policies around beautification and public art and recognizing how valuable that is for a community. And in terms of planning documents, this is the place that you would want to see something like that. So there are a lot of general or comprehensive plans out there that are starting to incorporate elements of beautification and public art into that space. But I think, you know, besides kind of the really explicit expressions of artwork that we see throughout our community, the way there is I think my personal perspective would be that there's a lot of value in just bringing a creative lens to the way that we're thinking about our built environment, maybe not in such an explicit way, and just thinking about the way that people engage with our built environment here. So I guess I can't really speak to what is going to be in the plan. We haven't gotten there yet, but I guess that's my perspective.
I appreciate that. I guess I should ask this question first, but was there an opportunity during the visioning to include an art component into any of the scenario modeling with the public?
So, yeah, thanks for asking that. So the visioning process was prior to our scenario modeling process.
Or
And so
vice versa?
during the visioning process, the way that we incorporated that was probably, I mean, I would say that there was the opportunity in all of our engagement there for people to express that they had a vision for a future Flagstaff that incorporated more art and or public art, you know, that creative placemaking, that kind of thing. Probably where we saw it come out the most was in our um, potentially in our community asset mapping, where we more explicitly talked about community assets that people saw. So Yeah.
Um, One of the things that is really key in a planning document is just the idea that you put the artist on the team or the arts at the very beginning of the design process, especially when you're trying to humanize built environment.
Hmm.
You know, like, well, we're having very good luck with Lone Tree. We're having, but even then, we were late in the process. So that by the time they think of asking us is after a lot of big design decisions have been made. And it is really helpful to have that art thinking in at the beginning of planning. And I know that there's a resistance sometimes because people think that slows the process down. Somehow it's gonna gum up the works. And it doesn't really, and from my 23-year experience, but it's really hard for people who don't have that experience, who've never seen it work, to know that. And I guess it's a really fine thing about when people think about the art. They like to think of it at the end and they like to tag it on, but you miss all those design opportunities to really humanize the built environment. And if that's a goal of the project, of the plan, to humanize whatever you build, then art has to
Yeah.
be at the beginning, not at the end.
I
Yeah.
agree with what Jana has to say, because the fact is that if you don't make art explicit, and I think our BBB taxes are a really great example of art being made explicit. Because we have that, we have a program. And so then art infiltrates the community. And when we don't put the words beautification, public art into the plan, then they become tangential. And when Janice says humanize, I also think about human size. And so when we talk about Lone Tree, it's not just about, are we decorating the overpass? It's about, how do physical human beings relate to that environment that they're in? How are they going to interact? And what I think about is the lack of walkability in our city. And people are talking here about wanting a livable city, wanting a sustainable city, but we don't have sidewalks that are pleasant to walk on. And that's about beautification, right?
Hmm.
So if you don't call out beautification within that process, if you don't call out that human experience of being in the space, we're going to forget about it, and we're going to end up with things that look like, every arterial with, I can't believe the number of people that explained to me that we have plenty of flat foots trails, and they're all along the Route 66. I'm like, yeah, that's where I want my kid learning to ride a bike. So, and that's just it's not a great experience. And so that's how I relate to what you're saying, Jana.
I would add to that, I'll take Jana's word for it, that including public art doesn't slow down the process. I'll take your word for it.
Hmm.
And even if it did, I'm okay with it.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank-
the answers, Jordan. And I'm happy to start off the conversation for sure. I think we just kind of like overstood on that idea that words needed to be in there, even if, although we have a great deal of respect for the concept of having the idea and the design partners in there to thwart that idea, but if we don't actually have words somewhere, and I don't know where else to make this statement any clearer, that's what we want. Thank you.
Yep. Heard loud and clear. Really great comments, by the way. Just really, really wonderful comments. So thanks for, yeah,
Thank
just
you.
just speaking on that. And yeah, that is heard loud and clear, and that was heard during the SWOT assessment that we did with the commission as well. So it is, yeah, it is something that, yeah, we are, as I say, we are putting pen to paper later this fall, and I would encourage all of you to just keep an eye out. We do a lot of our kind of our notifications of outreach. We have an email list. We'd use the city's social media. Sometimes we send out mailers, especially for our bigger workshop stuff. So to keep an eye out for that, for our scenario choosing workshops as well. and keep coming and expressing that desire to um, see this plan speak a lot more to the way that we experience our built environment, because I think there's a lot of room for that in this next regional plan. So um,
Jordan, I have a question going back early in the
sure.
presentation. It was from the visioning sessions where you had those
Yes.
six came out. And the last one was kind of interesting to me, about more accountability from
Mm,
city and county government. And I was wondering, beyond just regular political grumbling in there, as a commission that's appointed by the city council and like makes fiduciary decisions, and I was wondering if there's anything in there that accountability wise that people are looking for that could help us as commissioners.
yeah, that's a really, really excellent question. I think what we heard most was, so what the way that we are required by state law, which is always a great way to start off a comment, is that we have to do is that we have to do an annual report on goal and policy progress in the regional plan. So the way that that looks, so it's an okay document, and it has like 96 data points if you're into that, kind of thing, that are kind of loosely related to the goals and policies that we set. A lot of those metrics are just metrics that are, again, required by state law, but it's supposed to represent the progress that we are making on the regional plan. And I think, it's not something that is super well publicized. We don't talk with the community outside of kind of the annual report, and then during our discretionary development projects, kind of how we're holding up to the goals and policies that we've set in the regional plan. So I think there's a desire to see us maybe do a better job of communicating progress to the community. And there are lots of new and exciting ways to do that, from kind of more interactive dashboards. But that takes a lot of work to kind of start to create those things. So I think that's a lot of what we heard, just as far as like, we want to see evidence that progress is being made on the things that we care about. Um, and then in terms of the second part to that question, what you as a commission can kind of add to that, I think it's hard. I think we get that, to kind of stay involved in all the ways that the regional plan touches our community throughout the course of a year. But I think that's probably the biggest way, is kind of understanding how the regional plan kind of fits within our broader policy framework at the city, and kind of speaking up as a commission in things like, um, I council member Sweet might not like me saying this, but showing up to city council meetings and kind of speaking to projects from their alignment with any goals and policies that we have set regarding beautification and public art. And you have the opportunity to formulate letters as a commission and provide those to city council on those elements. So I think that's probably the most direct way that I see. But each one of you is a resident of our city, and can also just generally have your voice heard whenever we have these extensive engagement processes.
Thank you.
Jenna, can we make sure that our email addresses are sent to him to be on that email distribution list about upcoming?
Certainly.
Yeah, please send those to me, and I'll make sure that you're each on that.
I'm on it. Jordan, thank you for such a thorough presentation. That was really.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was really fascinating too. Like I said, I'm really intrigued by the theme. And
Sure. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And
my
yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
Good work, Jordan. We
Thank
like the way
you.
you talk.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks again.
This is the second time I've heard you discuss some of these programs, and I really think you've done a great job, so thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate that. All right. All right. If there's nothing else, I will sign off. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
think the real question is how many pickleball courts are.
You should have done speech.
Meeting this room has heard in the last 6 months.
Are allowed to be mentioned in this room.
No, it was like, all I want to say is that the master swimmers of Flagstaff are going to be really upset. If they get their pickleball courts before we get our pool.
All right, enough. Okay, let's,
Order.
great, so next up is, our new year, because start of the fiscal year, I know it's always odd for me to think that way, it's just first of the year beginning in July, but it is. So first of all, I really want to, thank Chair Cruz, because, he came to me with this idea for a self-evaluation form. And Dave McIntyre and I had already discussed having one-on-ones with all the commissioners at this summer, while our schedules aren't too crazy. My city council is in recess, and today, woohoo!
Here I am.
And so we kind of really geared the evaluation form, with that follow-up conversation in mind. Both we want to know, how hard or easy it has been for you to do your duties. For those of you who were here this last year, our new commissioners don't get the self-evaluation form until next year. But also to find out really where your interests lie so that we can make sure as staff that we're engaging you. And I already have read, 3 have been returned. There's 2 that are still outstanding, but I already actually learned some areas of interest and engagement about 2 of our commissioners I didn't know prior. I think that's really exciting. It'll help me, as the program manager, really kind of guide the year and provide more opportunities. Make it engaging, fun, and you've got our program accepted and heard in the community. So, and for us to hear back from them, and you are our primary citizens that we want to hear from. So I'm sure the 2 outstanding commissioners haven't turned theirs in yet. Will very soon. You shall remain unnamed. The homework was due today. But the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I sent you out some review standards, and we are going to have some beautification and action grants coming up very soon again. As you know, we have them every 6 months, and we've also had some art approvals. And I, think that sometimes, we get very informal in here, and it's tons of fun, but also we have to remember that artists do listen to these comments afterwards. These meetings are recorded, and if they get turned down, or even if they get approved, they want to hear the comments. For instance, I think about the Downtown Connection Center, which you guys did not, you gave only a preliminary approval for the tree sculpture. And there were some concerns, and those concerns were really well articulated. And the artists were able to listen to it afterwards. We didn't have them here in the room so that you could, feel free to talk. But they, listened to it afterwards. And as they said, those comments really, now they interpreted them and came out with, an outcome that maybe you weren't expecting on how they would interpret your comments, but they really took them to heart. And I think they ultimately improve the project. Also, when somebody gets turned down, we want them to apply again. So there are certain ways to even say a criticism constructively. And so also when we ask questions, there's ways to ask questions neutrally. So I came up with this guide, which I, did borrow from Liz Lerman's critical response. And from some of the service that I have done with the Creative Flagstaff on their committees. And they use some of these similar policies, not exactly the same, but very similar policies. And so it's really, I think, really good to keep in mind that, you know, it's really good to state what's meaningful, evocative, and exciting about some, you know, a proposal that somebody's put forward. And if you have questions, you know, just again, think, is it neutral instead of like a negative implication? And I think this is more for our BIA grantees who are just members of the community. They're not even professional artists sometimes, some of the people who are doing the grants. So, you know, the example given is, you know, instead of asking, why is it so dark? Ask, you know, what's the ideas that guided the choice of lighting? That is and then you might get a surprising response. And then you may still not think anything differently about it, but you are most likely to get a better response out of the artist if you ask them the question of what was behind their choices and the lighting. But also, though, that doesn't mean that this is, you know, just all yes, 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 and, you know, all compliments, because if somebody gets turned down, they want to know why. And so I just think that there's just ways to just be, you know, constructive. I mean, I think saying I don't get it is fair. You know, I'm not saying, you know, if you truly don't get something, then, you know, I'm understanding. The other thing that I think we'll go over a lot is sometimes an artist is working in an area that isn't our personal taste. And I think as commissioners, one of the things that we have to keep an eye on, but is it in part of the community's taste? And is it a good representation of that style, even though it might not be something that we would put in your own living room, you know, over your own couch. So those are just some things I want to, you know, have you keep in mind as we go into reviewing proposals this year and reviewing the grant applications.
Jenna, I would also like to ask if you could bring this back up, and if you have any new ideas, add them in every time we have new commissioners seat. This is a great way to introduce people into what they can and can't say.
Yes, and so I'm kind of building, we're gonna maybe tweak the BIA grants a little bit this time. I think to allow a little bit more time and allow you guys maybe to formulate your questions for them before they come and present, and so that they can hone their presentations a little bit better to the questions that you have. So since so many of them end up having to come back, I think we'll build in a little bit more, like we'll review the applications, we'll determine the questions ahead of time, so you have a little chance to think about them and hone them. And then we'll pass those questions on to the applicants. And then the applicants can include that in their presentation, and we'll give them a little bit more time. So we have to still make it kind of equal time, and so we still might have to vote in individual cases for more. But we'll try to allow them a little bit more time for their presentations.
I want to thank you for bringing this up, especially since I might be someone put my foot in my mouth on occasion. But I appreciate the reminder.
I think everything has gone, you know, pretty smoothly, and I think that it's just a way that we can help our artists. And that is one of the things that we really want to do. We want to help the artists improve their proposals. We want, especially the local artists, to learn from our process.
I think this is a great opportunity also for the chair, you know, from now on in the future, for them also to be trained on this. So that way they can encourage conversation amongst us and ask the questions that the person who's speaking might not be really in the mood to divert from their thought process.
Right.
I think that's an excellent opportunity all the way around for all of us to be a little bit more participatory in conversation.
And I do know that not every topic that we talk about excites every commissioner, and I don't think that if the commissioner really has nothing to say, that they need to say it. But I do think when we have artist proposals and, you know, BIA applications, that for those artists, we do need to all speak and help that artists understand why they got a yes vote and why they got a no vote, or why they're being asked to come back.
I love it. Good work.
So where?
That was all Janice doing.
I help with the
Right.
survey.
You
Yeah.
first.
But as far as our new year, we are going to have an election of the chair and vice chair at the August meeting. That is required annually, each and every year. So we can talk about nominations tonight, but we also, and you can nominate yourself or another commissioner. Or you can submit them to me by mail, by August 7th. I need them at least a week before the meeting. But Chair Cruz, would you like to lead this part of the conversation?
Sure, I did want to just say something too about the survey that we sent out. So that was, the survey comes from an exercise that we do on the Symphony Orchestra Board to re-engage folks every year and just to sort of see where they're at, see what their interests are for a particular time frame, because time, money, interests change, right? As things get busy or less. So I would encourage you to, and so I brought this survey to Jenna. We were having a conversation and I said, why don't we do something like this? And then she massaged it. We shot it back and forth with Dave and went through several iterations of it. But if you have comments about it, I do think that it's sort of, not at this point, but in the future, I think if you think we could ask something differently or better or in addition, that might be good to know, because I do think to the extent that the document can really inform where we are as individuals on this collective and the work moving forward, I think that would be super helpful. So feedback on that would be great if you have any. And then the discussion for officers, we don't currently have a vice chair, so we really do need a vice chair. I've been chair for the last year and I think a few months. I took over somebody's.
15 months, yes.
Yeah, so the chair role runs the meetings and meets with staff monthly to go over the agenda prior to the meetings and even prior to the agenda going out. So there is a time commitment and responsibility for that kind of work. The chairperson's elected every year, and it'd be lovely to have somebody start nominate themselves or get nominated for the next year. I have really enjoyed doing it. If nobody wants to do it, I can do it again, but it's a great opportunity for someone to really work much closer with staff in terms of the operations of the commission. So think about whether you are available and interested for doing the work.
I think you've done a great job and I'd like to nominate you to continue.
I think you're doing all right, and I'm cool with it. But I wanted Carla to get back in there since she was, basically the chair when the council decided for her not to be anymore.
It wasn't the council. A council person.
Forgive me. One of those moments.
Let's talk about pickleball instead.
I will say that Carla has had a conversation with staff, and she has a preference to be nominated for vice chair. I'll just go ahead and say that just because of some other time commitments. Yeah, but she very much, is interested in.
I love the work, but I do have some other. I'm very dedicated to 4th Street, let's put it that way.
Is that a nomination?
Then I guess I'll nominate her as vice chair.
Do we have any other nominations?
I was gonna nominate Chris just to mix things up, but. Well, I think that, adding a different perspective, like Mike, you've been very like perfunctory, like with the staff, which has kind of led to a staff-led commission, which I don't want to see, but it has helped streamline things with staff really well. So there's a definite importance to your time here, for sure. But, I think that it would be nice to see somebody else see what they can do with it for a minute. And that's the only reason I do it. If not, I'm with you.
Nominate Chris.
I thank you, but no, sorry.
Okay.
My work is just, theater's not out of the pandemic and so work is stressful.
And I'll stand behind your nomination.
You can make other nominations by mail, like I said, we have until, August 7th, so that's nearly a full month.
Is Claire on here?
No, she's not. Not today. She usually is actually, but
Yeah.
not today. We do have two Claires now, so we're gonna have to, Claire Johnson and Claire Edelman-Heath. So, we're gonna have to use Commissioner Edelman-Heath and Commissioner Johnson. So, the next one, I think we have a little PowerPoint. Too long. But as you know, Ken Lane, came and made that presentation about the absolute bike mural last night. And, we heard the positive comments that you guys had about trying to help out. He's got, a major project that he's funding, the front of his facade stucco. And he is following up with historic facades to see if he's eligible for their grant money. I've seen some back and forth, and it is a 100-year-old building, so maybe, but timing may be an issue. We're not sure because he has to move before monsoon. And with that in mind, it just provoked a big and larger discussion within staff and the program. And we had a lot of conversation about a lot of the murals that are in our public art brochure but aren't officially funded by us, so that we can't go restore them when something happens. And so we decided that we would go ahead and authorize the staff $4,500, for the supplies to fix the side that has the mural. And so, but we wanted to really make it a pilot for an actual new grant to kind of sit alongside the BIA grant. And so next slide. So these are some basic ideas. The policy will have to be written this year and come back to you for approval. But this is what I thought some basic elements should be. I don't think this is like going to be a high demand, high cost, grant that, we can, afford to do up to 2 a year. I don't think that we'll get more than 2 a year. Maybe we won't get any more.
I've already said.
Oh, no, you've already done it. Okay. Miss McCord. But I know, but then up to $4,500, we'll make it the same as the VA grant. That keeps us under the 5,000 and allows us to direct select. It would probably be implemented for the next fiscal year just because of the time it takes to write a policy with legal and get it adopted. We would, for this, require a full match requirement. I mean, there has to be investment, but if this is on a private business, there has to be at least a matching grant. And we could even consider more. We could, so that's something that I'd like to have your feedback on. I'm only, talking about exterior public murals, at this juncture. And of course, then it has to have some artistic or historical community significance. And how do we define that? Because there have to be some way to define, and that's something I'm gonna reach out a little bit to some, some definitions of that in the public art field. But we want to define that in some way. I at first thought about, it had to be out there at least 10 years. And I was like, but you know what, if somebody 1 year after it was up had driven a truck into Flight of, Song or into Myth of the Mother Road, we would have wanted to repair it right away. Even if it hadn't been out there, it was obviously, Euromyce had, again, enough of a significant reputation, had a, artistic significance in the community immediately. So I got away from that idea of it being so, kind of like the historic facade. It has to be 50 years or 100 years or whatever. Obviously one of the criteria is already in our art map. And we're already promoting it, even though we don't own it. Might be one easy shorthand, but I have to work on that. So this is just, like I said, a start. It's a start of the basics of a policy. So I will have, more chance for you guys to think about it. But if you have some immediate response, like I said, it's something I'm going to try to do in my spare time and get it through so that we can get it implemented within a year. But what happened with Absolute Bike is it's going to happen to other projects, and I know that there's some ones at the schools that have gotten into some trouble, and we had no mechanism to help. And it would be really nice if we did at least that. Maybe, we can't, pay $100,000 to totally redo a wall and all of that, but can help on the margins.
I think it's a great idea. I wonder, you mentioned adoption, but I wonder if there's something to have some commitment to it staying in place, especially if it's a private business that might want to rebrand or something like this, thinking about public investment. Might be something simple.
Like get a business license for, you say they'll commit to keeping it up a certain number of years. Yeah, I think for this, I feel that's somewhat a little bit of a barrier to entry on the PIA grants. And I know that's a future discussion we're having, but I think for this, it has more of a place. Yes, I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple little questions. I actually, it's funny because we've had conversations about multiple murals and restoration. There was that damaged mural on the Head Start down by Killip that was damaged in the flood. And I know that they were seeking some funding to help do that. There's also the Chanteau Begay piece on the front of Puente de Hojo is on wood, and the edges of the wood, it's cracking and splitting. And there are actually 3 or 4 murals there on that building that are all on the public art tour. And each one of them is in need of some small amount of restoration. And so then that begs the question, how do you spread it over multiple murals? If the applicant says we want to restore all of our murals, like, can they do that? That would be a question.
If they're a series in essence.
Well, like these are not a series, but they have 3 or 4 art pieces on the building that are actually on the public art tour. And so, and each one of them has a different kind of damage. Just because they've been there for a while, So I know that those things, but there is no mechanism to support those murals, but they are really important to the community. In particular, that Chanteau piece, it's a pretty remarkable piece to just have sitting on the front of a building somewhere. So I think it's great. That's an awesome idea.
And I wonder about, as you draft something, like, would there be, you talked about the piece that, got put up and then got run into and, you'd want to help fix that, but what if you help fix something and then it gets run into, like, would there be some sort of a limit based on, someone can apply every 3 years to fix something or,
Okay,
Right, because
okay, these are very good. Thank you.
that's a great question. Because I mean, I was thinking also about just our traffic boxes. They're not the same thing, obviously, but each time the space goddess gets hit by lightning.
Yes.
Strikes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how many lightning strikes? And then at a certain point, we're like, maybe this is a real bad spot
The
for
wrong
traffic.
Did it happen more than once?
Yeah,
Oh, it did. I didn't
not
know
on,
that.
not on, like,
No, but
Two
in the
boxes.
same summer, we lost both the main boxes of both Highland. And the one out on Cedar Gemini wasn't so odd because it's out in the middle of the field, but the one at San Francisco and Butler was quite the surprise.
Is
But
our,
I do think there was 7 lightning strikes that hit the ground in that storm downtown. South side, yeah.
are those things insured? Do we have like some sort of mechanism for getting help with funding, or do we just?
No, I
Pay
mean,
to get them
it's-
fixed.
considering we didn't have to repay the artist, we just had to pay the reprint and do it, was like $800.
Okay.
It's not a big deal.
that's good.
Yeah, those are very, very inexpensive at that point.
They're-
So,
They're an awesome program.
but yeah, how many times a limit of how many times you can reapply within a certain time.
One act of God is okay.
I think it might be active dog. we're all worried about.
Hey, Jana, I'm about to be really embarrassed if you mentioned this while you were talking and I was looking at the survey. But where'd you come up with 4,500?
Well, first of all, it's the same as our BIA grant cycle, but it is under 5,000, which allows us direct select. So we don't have to worry about any procurement issues. And could it be 4,900? Yeah, but the procurement doesn't like us to get the, snarkily close to the.
Cool, thank you. I like it.
Then,
Oh, I had one other question, I'm sorry. Because I was thinking also about the mural at Montalvo, the,
that's
yeah, the mosaic, yeah, at Montalvo. Like, if there's something like that that's potentially damaged by like another project or something like that, like, how would you, how would you manage this kind of thing? Like,
That was paid by our program.
right,
So anything that's paid by our program and, we have maintenance money for.
right.
I just, this are only for projects that weren't paid by our program
Okay,
or were paid by a BIA grant. And if it's on a private building.
okay. I was thinking more like something that's damaged by like city construction or something like that, where it has to
Then
be
we would-
restored
we might be-
afterwards.
we Might be liable, so then that's a different matter. We'd probably have to pay.
Well, no, not damaged on, like on accident, but like maybe they want to restore something because it was there, there's construction, and then they want to bring that piece back. You see what I'm saying? Like,
I think that would be a project for us.
it would be considered a new project.
Right.
Okay.
Find out what you're thinking about it. Is there something very specific going on?
Just read a lot of city council minutes and all of the budget documents. You need to start reading them too, buddy.
All right. Are there any more comments on the potential new mural restoration grant? All right. Kristen is up next.
I got first in that you did. I know.
Just kidding. I'll just say next if I remember which slide. So I wanted to make all of you aware of a proposal, a revised proposal that we received from a BIA recipient, Chocolita Cafe, and they received approval last fall to pursue a mural on the side of their building, which is located in the Kachina Square Shopping Center. And the artwork is by Dwayne Koyawena. And it is meant to beautify the wall and to create a community-centered space. And there are images of the location of Chocolita Cafe and the mural in particular. Next. And this is the artwork that was approved last fall. The rendering, the graphite, rendering at the top. And it's very similar in design and color palette to the image that you see at the bottom, which is a mural that the artist did for Next Step Prosthetics. And so what the artist would like to do is to take that existing artwork and revise it to include Hopi gods. And that particular image that he's working with, you can see on the right. And the artist didn't exactly state what these particular Katsina, how they are culturally significant. All that he stated was that he wanted to incorporate Hopi gods into the mural imagery. And so the final slide is the proposal by the artist of the integration between the pottery design that was approved last fall and this new iconography that he would like to include. And he is scheduled to start any day now, but I told him wait because we need to see how the artwork is integrated, this iconography is integrated, and then B, we would really enjoy your feedback and your input for this particular revision. The artist would like to do.
We did take this to legal.
We did take this to legal. Legal stated that staff can absolutely make this decision. We don't need BPAC's approval, but we value your input.
And also, we asked if there was any problem with
Correct.
the religious iconography.
Correct, thank you.
And there is not. So it is not,
Who did you ask?
this, just Anya Wendell.
Did you talk to any of the other tribes?
No, we have not run this by the Indigenous Commission. But I was asking a strictly legal question about religious expression of religious freedom. That's what I ask legal. I don't ask
Totally,
legal.
totally.
about it.
That's what I expect from staff. I was just throwing it out there. I don't know if that's something that the commission would like to explore, or if that's just gonna add too much work to your thing, but when we're dealing with gods and we're dealing with tribes,
It's an interesting question about other tribes or whether people within Hopi themselves would be. And I find it now we did take the iconography that Dwayne used on the traffic signal cabinet at Beulah and Forest, Woodlands Village Boulevard. And we took that to Rose Tohi and the Indigenous Commission, and there was no issue with it being symbols of a particular tribe. But those, but in every, and that's the Hopi sun and the peaks and it, it's a little bit different than this. But it's, so that was given an okay.
What was the reason for the change?
So Sarah, the owner, Dwayne had approached Sarah and just let her know about what he was thinking. And because there are quite a few Hopi community members who not only own businesses in that particular location, but also frequent that space, he thought that the addition would, it would be a welcome addition to the community there.
And the owner said, because that was my second question.
Yes,
what did
she
the
is
owner think?
absolutely, she said she would love to do this. She supports supports his vision.
I couldn't speak to iconography, but I do like how it's a variation from the other mural, which was very similar. I'm just thinking about our perspective on having collections and variation within the city. I like that the artist has evolved the piece to be unique to this site and this location. So from that perspective, I'm in favor of it.
I mean, it is on a private wall versus, and it's a BIA grant versus something that is a city-funded art project that speaks from the city itself. And so I mean, I really, on BPAC, I really come down on the side of more art is better. And so when we encourage and foster the art, I think we're better off as long as it's not something that's meant to make somebody else feel small. And that's that's the one thing that I feel like sometimes we have to be careful of within the indigenous art is, like, I know from my experience and my discussions with Dwayne, he has some very strong opinions about the relationships between Hopi and Dene. And they're not 100% positive. And so it might be smart to just ask Rose if there's anything in there that is potentially, start something. But I don't think so. Dwayne's a very, very professional artist. And he and I have had actually a lot of really interesting discussions about Katsinas in particular because of the care with which he chooses what he makes public. Because so much of Hopi religion is so private and not available for public consumption. So I would imagine these are pretty generic. Yeah. So as long as that's a bar that's been passed, and it's that fairly generic thing. I think it's great to have more art that's expressive and unique to our community.
I agree with everything that Carla's saying. I'm wondering, and when Anthony brought it up, like, is the default thing to just ask Rose and go to that commission, and then they're the official arbiter of if we approve the, and I'm wondering if you did go and ask, and someone said, no, we don't like this, then what would we do? Because we've talked about this a couple of times in the last year or so, and it's never turned into an issue. But what if you did ask Rose and went to that commission and they said, oh, no, this one person says this, as Carla was saying, there's a lot that tribes agree on, and there's a lot that tribes don't agree on. And I'm just curious, this seems like very innocuous and it would fly. What would we do then?
Depending on what was said, it changes the outcome. I mean, it is,
Is it when
it's
you
an
see it?
internal staff decision, but I always try to come back and solicit feedback. If there was opposition from Rose, I would not go forward with that. So we would have to delay it.
If it doesn't add lethargy to the whole project, then I think it would be good to say something, but I'll leave that up to staff's discretion. I'm happy with it the way it is. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I feel like I'm a little out of my depth here, so I'll ask some questions and hopefully they make sense. First of all, this artist's work is beautiful, and I love the whole thing. I don't know, and help me phrase this question correctly, where in the Hopi tribe religion meets culture. And I ask that because enhancing culture, I think, is a beautiful thing, and religion can be divisive. I'm trying to figure out where that line is, and as a government, I'm kind of opposed to mixing with religion, and I'm not sure I'm finding a line there that makes sense to me.
I'm gonna give you a strict legal response and then just an observation. I do think that cultures differ by how tightly their religions and cultures are, intertwined. And that is probably a judgment that culture The, I mean, for some, there is no culture without the religion, so you deny cultural expression. You denied any religious iconography, that's how tight it can be. But as far as the, that is why we consulted Anya, Wendell, about the religious iconography, because we, you know, this is government money, but it, you know, she has been very explicit in a number of cases. I kind of knew what her answer was going to be, that, you know, you are allowed to express religious expression, even if it's paid with, as long as we're not promoting that religion. And since this is something that is embraced by the private owner, it is you know, it is an expression of that owner's wish. In this case, it's you know, it's a private building.
It's about community building.
Yeah.
There's not much over there that.
And I'm sure I didn't state actually the exact legal case law, but Anya's come back twice now with the same opinion for us. But we ask her each and every time, just because it does make you nervous.
I mean, I'll take your word and hers that it's legal,
Yes.
but that's different than being, like I said, I feel like I'm a little out of my depth because I love the art in general. I don't want to squash cultural expression. That religious government thing. Yeah, sorry.
You also,
Sorry.
oh, but you also have to consider the unique position of the indigenous groups in Flagstaff relative to culture and religion and many of those things. I mean, fact of the matter is, we make a lot of money off of this as a community, you know, and having these kinds of things in our community brings tourists in, it brings, you know, people in to see what's happening here in our community. That mural will bring people who are not Hopi to Chacolita, and it will help that business. And so there's a way to think about public art and what it does for the community as well. And it doesn't really matter. And in fact, it will probably enhance the success of that business to have it include some Katsina imagery, because it's a little more interesting and it feels, you know, like a Flagstaff experience, you know, a unique experience for a tourist. Tourists don't really go to that side of town, so it would be lovely if they did. And so, you know, I recognize your challenge with it, but I think in this case, if we can, you know, and I'm running test cases in my head, you know, like what would I do if this was the Baptist church? You know, and you know, honestly, if it was a Baptist church and they wanted to put a mural up of like celebration and music and gospel on the side of their church, I'd probably be in favor of it, as long as it didn't make somebody feel small. You know, and as long as it wasn't something that was meant to denigrate or defame another group. Now, if they wanted to put a mural of a preacher on the side of a government building, I would probably question that, just as I would question Kachinas on the side of a government building.
I appreciate your thought though, Chris, because what you're basically saying is, you know, if you were to take not American, but European stance on religion, and you wanted to put Jesus Christ on a cross, it couldn't be replicated the same as this. You're just seeing that perspective.
And I understand that that's my short-sightedness a little bit, but also I grew up in Hawaii. Hawaiian guards is part of culture, or a prominent part of my home. So I'm trying to get both sides of it, but
I think it's awesome.
Thank you for your input. Staff will weigh it. And so, thank you. Then I think next. Okay. I have if all of you didn't pick up one of these, this is the Flagstaff Green Book Historic Tour. As it is presently configured. And it really, I have to thank Discover Flagstaff. I think they did, a really stellar job with this. And some of, I think the issues have come up because there's just, this town is changing and some of these sites are changing as we move. But one of our council members took this tour and had some trouble finding the locations. And it's funny because I took the first half of the tour, which was, the area around downtown and South Side, right? Because it was closest. And I was like looking at it and I was like, oh, I'm not having any trouble, finding these locations. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And, I was seeing that, some of them had this sign and there was a request for maybe some historical markers, saying Green Book Tour. And maybe something similar to the walk and or talk for Route 66. And indeed, two of the sites are the same. And so I was like, okay, well, we could make, a logo-like sign and add it. And as I was walking around the downtown and the South Side, I was finding holes and I was like, okay, that's great. I did listen to this walk and talk here, and it doesn't mention anything about this being a Green Book site. That was really interesting, and it's in and of itself. But I was thinking pretty positive, so go ahead to the next slide. And it seemed like, okay, so, one of when I was using the map, when I went to number 11, which is 122 East Route 66, one thing about the map is it only shows, like, for a site that doesn't exist anymore, it only shows the old photo. And if you read, you say now it's occupied by Arizona Music Pro. But, when people are kind of walking around, looking at a map, that 122 is really hard to see on that Arizona Music Building. And so I was like, okay, there was a pole out front, yes, that would help guide people to know that that's the building. Or one of the other things is perhaps this brochure could be updated. It would have to be updated if we got kind of a logo sign anyway, because we'd have to put it on here. But maybe an after picture needs to be there as well so that people, because just burying it in that small text, I had to like, oh yeah, okay, because I was thinking it has to be this building. It has to be the Arizona Music Building. And I was with Trace Ward, who's the head of Discover Flagstaff. He goes, I don't think so. And I was like, I'm sure. And then it was like, see, it is this, afterwards. But we didn't go down to, so go ahead to the next one. We didn't go down to the other part. And then I went there actually this morning, which is that cluster around Milton and Route 66. Now I know where the council member got lost. So here it's, first of all, to get to Rose, Berry Hall, if you are in a car, you've got to take that winding thing around Reardon Road and, to get to it. And, it's basically closed off. It's behind a construction fence. It's not really easy to find, but the worst is actually number 5. If you'll notice, number 4 and number 5 have the same exact address. In the brochure, they both have 701 South Milton. So do 2 and 3, and 2, that's the Mandarin Buffet that's also, closed down and under construction. So again, our before picture we need an after picture. And then, the Park Plaza, is quote to the left of it. So that was a little, confusing, or was to the left of it. It's really not there anymore. It's just the parking lot. But then I was like, where do we put a sign? That's that's Milton, that's ADOT. ADOT's not gonna let me put anything on their posts, you know, or they might not let me put anything on their posts. So all of a sudden I'm running out of posts. So I was, you know, thinking about that, and then 4 and 5. So the pink flamingo, it gives the same address, but on the map, it looks like it's down Route 66. It's past the Y. I don't know if it's the Super 8. I couldn't tell. It was one of those like, okay, I give up. Where was it? And it was like, okay, here's the problem. You don't really know if you're taking this tour where it was. So, you know, besides the fact that this is nothing to do in a car, because you're just trying to turn around that Y like 8 times. You were like me this morning, you were doing it during rush hour at 8 o'clock, and it's really tough. So, but first of all, this kind of came to us as a request, both Discover Flagstaff and BASS, Beautification Arts and Sciences, was kind of called to this meeting by upper management. The council member has been told that this will be something that would be prioritized for the next fiscal year. Not, you know, you're not going to take it on this year, but we can start sketching out what it might be and bring it to the October retreat. I do think that there's some tweaking that needs to be done, but whether this is really a Discover Flagstaff project or whether this is our project to do the sign, I'm not convinced yet. I'm just telling you that we have had a request. It's a potential new project. I'm kind of giving you the parameters and some of the issues that I know about. Hopefully by October retreat, you know, it'll be either a Discover Flagstaff project, a joint project for us to consider. It's not certainly anything we would be doing alone. I need to probably bring in historic preservation. I do see the issues, and I do think that this can, as good as it is, and it is good, could be improved, but it's already dated and old, and things have happened to the site. That's no longer, when this was published, Barnes and Noble had yet to be built. So it identifies El Rancho as, you know, where the Barnes and Noble is to be built. Well, we know the Barnes and Noble is coming on. So some of it maybe just, this needs to be updated. I'm not totally convinced we need to do these markers. I'm not opposed to markers. We really get in trouble on Norman 66 unless we can put them on the building. And then that's applying to public owners. And I mean, private owners versus it being on city property where I can stick it on a post, you know, like the walk and talk were. So I'm not yet convinced what should be done and whether we should be involved.
Since these weren't built since back in the day, I feel like we probably won't even be using a whole lot of paper for the next iteration.
Yeah.
You know, now that we have cell phones. Jenna, how do you feel about this being dropped in the beautification public art lab? Or like working on or thinking forward in this?
I think this is an outcome of our work being so well received by city council. I think we were asked because our aesthetic work is well received by city council. That is why I think we were
it's a good
pulled
fit.
in.
Correct.
That could be a good partnership.
Yes.
With Discover.
I do, it definitely would be a partnership. We would not be doing it alone. And so, but whether we would be in charge of designing the sign is probably more where, you know, we would be for that. But you know, Discover Flagstaff does this better. I think, you know, some of the, just the input that I've given, and then if they get, you know, Mark Revis out there rewalking this and, you know, that's their partnership there to see, you know, especially that number 5 the location actually has to be identified.
Numbers, what is it, numbers 2 and 3 also? Those are on the NEU master plan, and they are not going to stay.
They're not gonna say they're going away. They're going away.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that, so it's gonna be really, I think it's an
I mean-
interesting discussion. Whether you have sites that exist and sites that don't exist.
I mean, there's always the
They
thing
need to
where,
be maybe color coded that way. Like you can actually go see this. This is just a location.
Good, absolutely. But I appreciate that you wanted to let us have some skin in the game. It does seem like a fun partnership.
this actually feels like a thing that would be pretty appropriate to have some signage. Something a little, like almost a little plinth or.
Should it be
marker.
signage with a QR code versus, I know, I mean, you say this when people go to the visitor center and they pick this up.
Yeah.
You know, so it's still, the hand thing is, you know, still a valuable thing. Should it be like the walk and talk has a phone number that you dial and you listen?
Yeah, if you could get the description from here and then kick that QR code that kicked it onto a app, for instance, and then they had geo fences that showed you the exact location and took you there through Google Maps or the like. There's a lot to talk about.
We could also pull this into the app with the company that we're working with in Scottsdale. So we're working with a company in Scottsdale that wants to do a downtown walking app of historic Flagstaff. And so they've asked us to give them 10 public art pieces with a summary so that they can incorporate, and it's all free, but so that they're basically asking for content. So we could fold something like this into that as well for our digital users.
I think it should be folded in so that there's not 5 different tours and 5 different pamphlets and 5 different apps.
You wouldn't want to segregate it. I mean, quite literally, it's the kind of information that should be a part of the
Right,
general
and this
discussion.
was, I mean, this is a, you know, this is a discover Flagstaff, you know, initial project. I'm sure they worked with historic preservation at the time. Like I said, I can't tell what year, I can just tell that Barnes and Noble wasn't built.
It's been a while.
I guess I would just do, I agree. I think the a digital option would be really fun, especially there's so much richness in historic photos, and to really be able to blow it up if you're there and get to look at it would just make it more engaging.
Suggestion.
I have two thoughts. One, there's a whole bunch of wonderful historical buildings that aren't in there. But the main thought is, I think this commission, working more closely with Discover Flagstaff, has a lot of potential, wonderful upsides. And I think that has potential. Says the guy who used to serve on the tourism commission.
I think it's important too. It's important too. I just don't want anybody to.
Yeah.
Discover Flagstaff made our wonderful brochure for our Coconino Scroll for the airport, so they assist us quite a bit. So can't say enough about Jennifer Shaver and her ability to make a brochure. Yes, I know. I'm working, actually, I'll just say it as an aside, that if she can put it into her work schedule, we're trying to get her to design a logo for Beautification Arts and Sciences, because we don't have one for the program. And it's come up so many times that we need one. And I mean, Pros has one, sustainability has one, and the arts doesn't have a visual logo.
No, at the same time though, like there has been like a fair amount of cringe about the kind of advertising / art that they put out. So we gotta like walk a little, nothing to be said about them doing it the wrong way. They just have a different audience and objective. So
I think there's a difference between a graphic that's needed, a brochure that's needed to promote, and an art project.
Sure.
And that, we don't approach that like graphic designers. Yeah, there's a difference in culture.
Thank you, everyone. I have a football meeting.
Okay, well, I think we're nearly done, so.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for all of your hard work. Everything's looking beautiful. The traffic cabinets, I drive around a lot lately. They're amazing. The downtown, the flowers, the planters, everything. So keep it. All right. Bye.
Thank you. So next we have two from items.
Staff does not have any.
I just thought of a couple of things that I didn't announce previously. On Sunday, August 20th, the Symphony Orchestra is bringing back the home tour. The home tour is a home tour. It's been put on by the Flagstaff Symphony Orchestra Guild. And then, COVID happened and it went away. And so we're bringing it back this year in partnership with the Guild. It's the 20th anniversary, so it's supposed to be a really neat thing. I think we have 5 or 6 houses planned. That's on Sunday, August 20th. On Saturday, September 2nd, we're doing our Sippin' with the Symphony event. It'll be the, I think, second time we've had it, or the third time. I think I was gone last year. It's at Wiseman Aviation, and that's a really fun event. That's on a Saturday evening from 5 to 8 p.m.
Greg, what date was that? September 2nd.
September 2nd. It's Labor Day weekend.
I forgot, yeah, I went last year with Ms. Wendell.
Yeah, those two are upcoming with the Symphony Orchestra. The other thing I would say again is just to extend a warm welcome to our new commissioners. And that is all that I have for my two froms. Councilmember Sweet just left. Did she leave staff with any two froms?
No.
Are there additional two froms from members of the commission?
Just one, Ardex, which we all know had its pilot in May, is gearing up for the official launch in May. The dates will be Memorial Day weekend and the weekend before that, so for 9 or 10 days. I mention it because they'll soon have a call for submissions. For the full project, we're getting a chance to plan much further ahead than we did for the pilot. That means all the arts groups get to think ahead as well.
Any other
Rock Opera comes back.
Oh, we're hoping the ferrets come back.
Any other two from items from commissioners? Any requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move forward to the time and date of our next meeting. It's Monday, August 14th. We're meeting downstairs in council chambers for that meeting, so please note the location. If you come up here accidentally and there's no one up here, you're not here on the wrong date, you're just on the wrong floor. Downstairs, 4 p.m. And that's it. I will it's late. I will adjourn the meeting at 5:52 and thank everybody for their time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was the black?
Oh, it's fun. I was a little late. I was at 45.